On Facebook, how are you? Good. You got some really good music here today. It's too bad you're not here in person, but okay. This month, we have been, for the last 2 weeks, we have been moving from the consciousness of surviving, which is why me, into the consciousness of striving, which is by me, and we are now truly moving into thriving, and that is as me, through me. And in the first 2 weeks of the talks in this series, we talked about 4 stages of evolution. The first one is life happens to me, and we ask, why me? And this is our survival mode. And then we moved into the survival strategies, which is I gotta make things happen in life. And that's where we are consciously creating, but we're still by me. And the third and fourth stages of evolution would be through me and as me. And this is when we allow the divine to move through us, and everything is so much easier when we get to that consciousness, because it is the freedom from surviving and striving to a joy of thriving. So, thriving defined in a nutshell is being the vehicle through which God fully expresses, and the vehicle through which the seemingly impossible becomes possible. To live our lives in a state of fulfillment, joy, and freedom. And just this morning I read something on social media by Rumi, which I thought, oh, that goes in here. It is, never lose hope, my heart. Miracles dwell in the invisible. I thought that was, anything Rumi does is beautiful. So last week, we explored striving strategies. What got us here won't get us there, right? If you weren't here, then all these talks have been for the last 12 years on YouTube. So there's a plethora of talks on YouTube under my name. So, striving will only get us so far. What got me here won't get me there. So we bless everything that has taken place before this moment, this time right now, but we're ready now to move into a more expanded way of being, letting our divine potential really show through, that spark of the divine flame within us, igniting that flame, and learning how to thrive in our lives. Not just survive and strive, but thrive. Thrive in the freedom and joy and beauty that life truly is. In every one of our striving strategies, there's an assumption. That's what we do as a human species. We make assumptions, even when we're aware that what's part of the 4 agreements is, the third one is don't make assumptions. Well, good luck with that. Because it's part of our human consciousness is to make assumptions. But there's one assumption I want us to look at right now, and that's the assumption that is based on a deeper assumption. So take a deep breath. Because we are about to embark on a journey this morning of perhaps radical change in the way we think about our life. Remember, change your thinking, change your life. It's always in operation. We can always be aware of that. Here's the deeper assumption. We assume that things should be a certain way, and when they are that way, we judge them as right. But when they don't turn out that way, we judge them as wrong. And the problem with making an assumption is that we believe these assumptions are the truth, right? They're real. Like, this is the way it is. And so this is a fact. So we make up this stuff and we believe it as being real. I know I do. I'll speak for myself. all the time. I make assumptions about every single thing in my life. But the thing is, there's another way of being, especially with that right and wrong. If something happens this way, it's right. If it happens that way, it's wrong. So if you find yourself living from the assumption that things should be a certain way, don't beat yourself up about it, because it's part of our human paradigm. We all do it. We all make assumptions. So why should we be concerned about it? If we want to release our surviving and striving mode of being, then we must say goodbye to that assumption. We cannot change. We must change our thinking about this. This is a big one. This is a thing where we need to consciously focus and change it about how we absolutely believe this is the way it should be. When we talk of surrender, which is what today's talk is about, the last word is surrender, we mean surrender to God, right? Let go and let God. Surrender to a higher power. But what does that mean, actually? What does it really mean? Because the true surrender to God, which is required in thriving, you cannot thrive unless you bring in this higher power. I mean, that's just the way life is. It looks like people are thriving, but really, in reality, there's something missing. So a higher power, I don't care what you want to call it, in our lives as well. And it's to surrender the assumptive notion that life should be a certain way. And when it's not that way, we call it wrong. We call it absolutely wrong. And this is not going to serve us, because have you noticed that you make the plans, I'm going to get into this in detail, and things don't turn out the way you think they should turn out? Like all the time, just about. Really? Sometimes they turn out way better. But because we're not focused on this is what I want, we judge it as wrong, and so we never get to enjoy it. We're not in that thriving mode of being. This is living in openness, in receptivity to the limitless possibilities which reside in that sometimes scary place, the unknown. You know, that place. The funny thing is, we're always living in the unknown anyway, we just don't know it. We think that we're in control of everything that's going on. And so when there's a huge change and, whoa, we don't know, because now we're in the unknown, that's where the thriving mode comes in. This is when it comes in. There are two hugely limiting factors about living, how life should be. So that's what we're going to talk about this morning. The first factor is we're operating from this belief that there is always the need to blame whatever is wrong. Whatever is wrong, people focus on blaming other people, governments, someone else. It's always this blaming for causing their problems. And they believe that the cause of their problems sometimes is themselves. Whether you look at me, them, or it, bear with me on this one. The universal human paradigm, which is something is wrong, is always from the context from which you take action. And the faster you make sure it, them, or me are heading in the right direction, because only you can control this, right? No one else can control this. The faster you can make things happen. This is the paradigm of making things happen. This is still the striving paradigm, because they got to look a certain way. They have to turn out a certain way. This is all controlling self. When things are going well, you feel like you are winning. I'm succeeding. Perhaps even striving. But as soon as things seem to fall apart or don't go the way you think they should, we immediately go into the striving mode. We are spiritually knocked off center. how do we often respond when our prayer treatments don't work immediately? Well, this isn't working. Prayer's not working. It's not working. We start to question our faith or think the prayer really is not working. We live in a state of doubt, not trust. Everything unfolds in divine right timing, and that's what we constantly have to remind ourselves and bring ourselves back to the center of that. There is an ancient Chinese story about a young man who thought he had become enlightened. He wrote a poem to his master about he was no longer controlled by the 8 winds. Then he sent it to his master, who lived 300 miles up the Yangtze River. When his master received the poem, he read it and wrote back, toot, toot, on the bottom of this beautiful poem. And the more the young man thought about those words, the more upset he got. At last he decided to visit his master, which was 300 miles up the Yangtze River, and it was not an easy trip to make. It was kind of difficult. As soon as he arrived, though, he went straight to his master's temple and asked him, "Why did you write this at the bottom of the letter? Doesn't the poem show that I am no longer controlled by the 8 winds?" And the master replied, "You say you are no longer blown about by the 8 winds, but yet it took 2 toots to get you to come all the way up here." I would say that he was spiritually knocked off of center very easily. And this is what we do. We take that one which we interpret as a bad comment, and it becomes the only thing we focus on. So we're not really grounded and centered in the divine, not when we can be blown around like that. The second factor is, even if we're not blaming and knocked off our center, when we are so concerned that life turns out the way it should, if we refuse to take chances, this is what happens when, okay, we have an idea. This is the way it's going to be. This is survival mode by me. And it's going to be this way and no other way. And this limits us where we can't take risks. We can't take chances. We can't grow because all of that is in the unknown. We set the intention, yes. We always set the intention, and then we let the universal law take over. The law does the outlining for us, and we get stuck in a box if we don't open up into the thriving mode. We're in this box which keeps our divine potential stuck. The way to make the impossible happen, the way to really thrive, the way to give God full expression through us is to be willing to take these risks, take these chances, step out into the unknown. We're there anyway, we just don't know it. We think we're safe in this familiar boundary little area that we've made for ourselves in our minds. A line from Daniel Nahmod's song, "I Don't Need to Know," he says this, he sings this: "I'm afraid of taking chances as if I could damage my soul." There is a complete freedom in releasing the assumption that we can damage our soul. It is so powerful, so incredibly everything, that when we realize that this is our divine essence, our eternal self, which we cannot in any way, shape, or form alter, change, or destroy. We can't do it. It's our divine essence that gives me great comfort. I know that. Knowing that it's not just I, myself, that do this. It's the Father within that does the work. Our soul's the truth in us. Wants us to expand, to thrive. It wants us to be so much more than we have condensed ourselves into this one way of being. Because we are a part of the unity of all life. We are a part of the divine energy that is God. We're part of all of this with so much more than we could ever know. Remember, the final line of our quote from John Randolph Price that we've been using is, I am free because I know who I am. Who am I then? The great question that's been asked throughout centuries. We are, each one of us, an eternal being under the influence of the divine government. I love that. And God gets to be in charge of all of it. The president, whatever we want to call it. I am an individualized expression created out of the nature of the great Creator. My truth is that I am one with all life and with God itself, unified in this field of eternal potential. That's who each and every one of us truly are. So what we must do then is to free ourselves from the illusion that we can control life so that it turns out a certain way. Only we can control how we show up, how we choose to respond, how we do our spiritual work and our work in the world as well. And then realize that life simply turns out the way it turns out. And I love to say, it is what it is. I say it all the time. It is what it is. How can I proceed from there? This is what is. This is what is. It's not what I planned, is it? But how can I proceed? What can I learn? These are the kind of questions we take in, not I'm a failure, it didn't work out the way I wanted to. What's going on? Or blame people, situations, governments, everything. It is what it is. That frees me up a lot. In this thing called you, Ernest Holmes wrote, you do the choosing, the law does the outlining. This is the distinction, he says, between choice and outline. If you choose to plant a tomato seed, you have chosen a tomato plant. But what grows on the plant and how many stalks it has, how many leaves it has, how many stalks it has, that we leave to the law. Because we've planted the seed of our thought, we will get that outcome if we're steadfast with that belief. But we don't, Ernest Holmes tells us, be specific, but don't outline. Because the divine manifestation is so much better than what we in our one singular little human mind can imagine it to be. We have set the motion of our intention by planting our seed of thought. Then we let it go. We let it go. And we let the law do the outlining. So for us today is to accept. And accepting is a gift. It's a gift. And to accept these statements. 1, life doesn't turn out the way it should. Life does not turn out the way it shouldn't. Life simply turns out the way it turns out. It's not so simple. That is so simple. Oh my God. We make it so really difficult. Tracy Goss, who I've quoted a lot this year, author of The Last Word on Power, writes, when you accept that life does not turn out the way it should, you are free to take actions that are not constrained by the need to control life. So it turns out the way that it should or shouldn't. We must accept this letting go. If you're letting go and letting God, right? The last word on surrender before you can thrive, if you intend to thrive, then you must feel free. Free to risk your reputation, your income, your position, even your relationships. Just risking it, you think it's a risk. Because all of these may be at stake. And you will only take risks when you realize now, in the long run, you really have nothing to lose. And this does take tremendous courage and faith. And I've done that a few times in my life, like really taking those big risks. And as many of you know, I left a relationship of 42 years, stepped out one night, in the middle of the night, just left, and no income, no place to live. I didn't have a plan, but the universe had a plan. It was waiting for me. This plan was waiting for me to take that step into the unknown. It was truly the unknown. And if I ever proved these principles to myself, it was through that experience. Because now I'm very aware of spiritual teachings. I didn't have that in my life before. So taking that risk was like I could never ever plan the way the universe, the many ways, came in and directed me and guided me and provided for me. And if I didn't take that risk, I would still be in this small little box, never thriving, never thriving. So sometimes it takes faith, number one. Big faith, and it takes courage to follow it. It really does. Ernest Holmes tells us in Science of Mind, the soul must make a complete surrender of itself to the spirit. With this attitude, any perceived threats will cease to hold you back, because in the end, you will see that they do not affect the outcome of your life. Life turns out the way it does, and there is power. There is a power and presence for good in the universe that is always there to support each and every one of us. And in the end, everything is in divine order, everything, if you allow it. Always for your highest and best good. Truly, it really is. These aren't just words. It's the way, and I know so many people that have lived their life by these teachings, and the same situation would happen, but they are now knowing that there is a higher purpose, that they are not alone, they are guided, all is well. We say all is well. Accepting that you can't control the outcome is not the end. It's not a point of why bother. Rather, it's the opposite. It's the point of pure potentiality. Whoa, pure potentiality. If we realize we can't control the end anyway, why not just go for it? We are free. We really are free to play full out and implement into our lives an extraordinary future. Free from fear about how things will turn out. Oh, what a control that is. That's why I've called this talk the last word on surrender. We set our intentions. We are specific in how we wish to create. Then we let it go, and we let go of the outcome. This is true surrender. This is really true. So when we let go of the outcome, it's true surrender. We are surrendering our need to make things happen, to turn out the way we think they should. Letting go and letting God is truly surrendering our resistance to change, to our will, our way of doing it, making room for God's will to commingle with ours. It is so much better when we listen to that intuitive guidance that will always come through, when we make room for it, when we open up. It's so much better than anything we could ever imagine. Surrender leads to holding a new type of conversation with ourselves. And briefly here, before I bring it to a close, are the elements of that conversation. If we indeed have nothing to lose, then who are we to be? What choices do we have between now and the time that we leave this planet? Remembering that we always die from one experience into a new experience all of the time when we let go. We do the choosing, and the law does the outlining. I can't say that enough. We now have the opportunity to choose to thrive. We have that opportunity to thrive, not just survive, not just strive. Now we can thrive for the rest of our lives. We get to play the game of thriving, and that's a good game to play, I think so. We get to be the vehicle through which we allow the divine to express through us and guide us and give us a direction, because it will. When we release the idea of how we think things should be, when we let go of the thinking that we have to control the outcome, this letting God and letting go, this is the last word on surrender. And I encourage all of us to remember these words, because it truly will change each of our lives for the better. It always does. And so it is.
Yes.